Alright, so I got my coffee. I don't know, I'm gonna edit through that, but whatever. I'll be talking about Muramasa this time. And it's kind of a gamble, because I've seen a lot of like 9s and 10s for it. Which is fine. It's one of those like Top Gear memes where the guy's like, oh yeah, this is amazing, or this is brilliant. I forgot what the wording is, but I prefer this one. And that one for me is Demon Bane. And that kind of is here in one route, and that's actually my favorite route in the end, so it's actually pretty funny. I wrote like 100 lines of notes, and apparently I had like a lot of nitpicks. That's mainly just pointing out things that I spent too much time thinking about it. If I didn't, maybe I would like this more. Also, just as a reference, I think I took like 55 hours to finish it, which apparently is pretty fast. I think people says like, oh, this is like a 60 to 70. So yeah, whatever. I'll start off with the generic stuff first, and then the minor spoilers, and then eventually into the plot heavy ones. It's mainly depending on like, oh, I want to drop off now because I want to experience it, or oh, well, I already read it, and alright, let's see what your shit opinion is. So Muramasa is about a lot of things, but mostly focused on this law of balance concept. You're forced to look at it like every time you start the VN, and it kind of gets annoying depending on how unlucky you are or how fucked up your computer is. Like mine crashed like maybe 10 times, so that's like another 10 seconds every time I have to load it back up. I'm gonna skip most of it until the spoil sections because it explains it well enough in the first couple of chapters. I think by at the end of chapter 2, you should know what's going on. So all you need to know is there's one silver mecha. There's all this terminology where like the mecha is called a Tsurugi and the pilot with it together is like the Musha. Don't worry about it, it's just the mecha. It's fine. So anyways, this mecha can make everybody go insane, and your goal is just to kill it, but you fail like right in the beginning, and the silver mecha just breaks the crap out of your best weapon into pieces, right? So now you're collecting these pieces like a 90s anime while destroying any influence this silver mecha is causing until like your next chance to destroy it. If you're looking for a title that's really heavy into this mecha genre, then you're probably going to be kind of disappointed, because it's like, yeah, there's a lot of mecha sections to it, but that's not the main point. It's like how music is its main point or main theme isn't about being in a band. It's about other things. Well, I talked about it then, I'm not going to talk about it now. Honestly, you can remove the mechas and just put like Shaman King spirits or something, and it'll work like half the time, and it will just work the same. It's more of a plot device to make the main character more viable and to make some situations possible, or at least believable. The thing is that even though it doesn't really hit my preferences, this is still written really well. And it handles it way better than how I thought, like, let's say like Steins Gate Zero. I thought it was written really well, but the tone of it just felt really stagnant compared to how Muramasa's doing it. Because there's a difference between being consistent and being just stagnant. The personality and the mannerisms of this main character never really changes drastically, nor does his humor for the most part. It's just that the genre itself changes around him. It's like he's just garlic sauce on pasta or chicken or whatever else you want to put on, instead of just being like, hey, I made meatballs. I was like, alright, cool, that's great. What about tomorrow? Meatballs again. It's like, no, fuck you, I'm bored now, I don't want more meatballs. Honestly, it's been a while since I finished like a 60-hour VN under like 2 weeks. Normally it takes over a month to do it. Each chapter changes a subgenre. Maybe the prologue and the 5th chapter are somewhat similar, and that's actually a good call, to be honest. Even the routes themselves are in different genres. Like the hero route is more of a shonen, action-packed and gives out like a lot of hype. The revenge route, or I think it's called Nemesis in this one right now, is more of like a smorgasbord of like subgenres that juxtaposes the more inherent like seinen vibes it gives you. In my notes it says that it was a lot closer to Demon Bane's route, if Demon Bane was a lot more down to earth, and I still agree with that, and that's why I think it's my favorite route. And the true route itself is a huge mix, and honestly it makes the hero's route really like the odd one out, or it just feels like I got shafted, where it's like, no, it's very focused, this is what it is, but later on it's like, oh, let's add it back in the true route to encompass everything. It's like, yeah, it makes sense, but it's still the most boring part now. So anyways, out of that, the art is great. There's not much to talk about. The revenge route had the best CG in my opinion, while the true route had the better like 3D models and backgrounds. But if I had to nitpick about anything, like a lot of the background CGs are just really fucking boring. A good example, like to counter that, is like in Chaos Child, a lot of CGs are boring up front, but the backdrops are actually really pretty. The soundtrack is amazing, and it's pretty funny that it's still the weakest part of the novel. Like, I still think Cyber Slayer has some better tracks, and so does Demon Bane. But this one just wins out by consistency. I think like maybe Defilement and Blade Arts 4 are probably my favorite ones out of the groups. Maybe Hikaru's song as well, but who knows. Generally, the mixing isn't anything you'd notice, and that's actually a good thing because it's being done well. But in the true route, maybe 3 hours before it ends, maybe 4 hours, there's a weird jarring section where a lot of sound effects are happening and Uzuki starts playing and you can't hear Uzuki for the most part. Like the first 30 seconds, well, I'm exaggerating. Like the first 10 to 20 seconds of Uzuki, I'm like, wait, is it? I have no idea what this track is because there's just jet sounds everywhere. I probably wouldn't even think about it if not everything else was just done well. And the thing is, like, I don't think I would even remember that part if there was like other issues around it, but this is the only one that I remember. So I'll be starting Minor Spoilers after this. I'm just putting in the score now for people that want to drop off. It's mainly about the first couple of chapters and what each character does. Overall, I'll be vague enough so it's somewhat safe. Anyways, I gave this like an 8+1. Some of the combat dragged on for way too long, and there was a couple of nitpicks I'll mention in the spoilers. But if you don't care about any nitpicks, then it's a 9. Like if I take away my preferences and base off just what's written, then I give it a 9. Because for me, normally the 8 is like, most things end as an 8, and the 9 and 10 are all bias based. If I take away all the preferences that I have, then I'd probably just give it a 9. It's a weird issue with me where normally the top score is actually an 8, and everything else is just based on bias. On the other hand, while the hscenes aren't crazy, I can see that there will be a lot of people that won't like them, but that's kind of the point. They're fucked up for the sake of being fucked up, but they're also not out of place. My worst complaint is that they're kind of obvious for the most part. Usually I'd say you can remove them and just have it implied, but that generally is not the case for this one. There's a few of them that are kind of important, and there's another few that's more based on just to enforce a specific theme for the main character. But it doesn't really matter, really. Everybody has their own tolerances, and there's going to be a few that just won't like it and don't want to stomach it. And it's not like you're going to like, well, now the experience is ruined. No, you can read it without it. It's fine. So, in a lot of these longer visual novels, genre fatigue happens a lot for me. And it probably happens to you as well. Like the plot behind a martial arts movie is more than just for padding time. Eventually, or even from the start, you don't even care anymore if there's no plot. It's like, alright, these are cool action scenes, but it's like it's an hour long. Damn, I'm dying over here. And it's the same thing with these. It's just that Muramasa skirts away from it really well without destroying its own tone. So like each chapter has its own subgenre to it. Like the prologue and chapter 5 are more akin to like an old school samurai movie. Chapter 1 is the most lighthearted and close to a standard high school VN, whilst also shitting on the concept. I kind of have issues with that in movies and stuff, but I'll give it a pass. Like there's seriously parts where I can rip a couple scenes out and just like, this is from Gintama, and I don't think anyone would even question it. This chapter introduces the main character, introduces Ichijo, the war-ridden setting, and the underlying tones. It also introduces you to one of the main villains in the plot, and probably the most well-liked. Or, I guess liked isn't the greatest word. He's the most interesting. If you put in the Batman universe, he'd be like the Joker in the sense that they spend most of the screen time just accosting the main character's way of life or way of thinking. Chapter 2 is more of a low fantasy setting, introduces the Suguri Smiths and like Kaine. It also shows Ichijo's complete ineptitude for navigation, and it ended up being really important even though it's kind of treated as a joke for the most part. It also explains the affection system. I've seen a lot of people actually messing it up. It's actually pretty funny because they kind of tell you what to do in chapter 2 and they still fail. Chapter 3 is more like Cannonball, and if you never read that one, then it's just a racing chapter. It's a refreshing change of pace, even though it's obviously short-lived. It shows how black and white the main character can be, while also showing that Ichijo is even a more drastic version of that. Like, it's pretty extreme. I think this is a chapter where they introduce the generals of the regime, and they're all pretty fun. And I'll talk about them in the major sections alongside like the first nitpick I found. Chapter 4 is like the shonen chapter. It's like 10% beach and then 90% just fighting. And for some reason, I had fun the whole time. Like honestly, it might be like maybe top 5 fights in the novel, which is kind of sad. Because I think most people will disagree with me, but I just liked it a lot. Chapter 5 is more of the flashback of the protag's daily life and how Muramasa and Genseigo came to be. Gensego's the white mecha I talked about, or the silver mecha, I guess. Also, I feel like it had the longest standoff in the whole title, and some people love that shit, and I have fun with it, but not this long. It's like, damn, it's like 10 minutes. Like, imagine you watch a samurai movie, and for like 20 minutes, there's just two guys looking at each other. It's like, all right, come, let's go. The hero route is based on Ichijo, and it's like a very extremist view, but almost every important mindset in this title's extreme to some degree. It's to the point where it's like, hey, are you Musha? Yeah, then you're not normal. You're fucked up in some kind of way. The ending was pretty cool while also being kind of dumb at parts, but that's what you expect from something that's in this genre. In my perspective, Ichijo kind of got shafted compared to the rest of the routes, but her stuff is actually pretty important to the grand scheme of things when you hit the true route. The focus general in this one is Daoshin. He's like the anti-monk, he's just the king of debauchery. He's kind of like the troll of the group. He's the asshole, no one really likes him, but it's also like, yeah, he's a good villain, yeah, more him, that was nice. The Revenge, or the Nemesis route for English, actually has a lot more going on for it. It's based on Kane, while like the hero's art was very kinetic. There's not a lot of choices, you just continue on and you enjoy the plot. This one has choices up the ass. It's to the point where it's like, yeah, okay, too many. And it's like a whole other subgenre of it, because there's one section where it's just like, wait, am I just in a choose your own adventure now? And it was, and I had a lot of fun with it. I also feel like it's a lot more comedic than the hero route, and I think they use that to juxtapose how like scary kind of can be sometimes. It shows what Sayo is and what the commissioner is for the most part. The focus general is Shishiku, and he's probably my favorite out of the four generals, but I think he also has the most screen time, so it kind of makes sense. The true route is closer to like the Nemesis plot, but focuses on Gatsego and also focuses all on Muramasa as well. And while the general focuses Chachamaru, I think her name is, it also puts a lot more detail in all the other three. I think a lot of nitpicks I had come from this route, but I find it's a lot more experimental and tries different things to lighten and other times heighten the mood. It also forces this minigame on you that took like 40 minutes for me to do. I'm just thankful there was like no timer compared to this, what was it, 999 or something, where you had to do Sudoku. It was like, dude, I don't know how to do Sudoku. I was 11, I think? Maybe 12? Oh wait, it's probably 14, but still, I was retarded. I don't know how to do freaking math. Was it arithmetic? No, then I failed at it. So all the smaller stuff is out of the way. I can actually start talking about the stuff I wanted to. Some are nitpicks, some are just complaining on how some characters are, or how shitty they can be. The affection meter kind of works the opposite of how it normally goes, because the rules imprinted on Muramasa forces him to kill one good person if he kills one bad. Later on it shows that it's based on levels. So if it's like, oh, you're a really evil person, then he has to kill like someone that he holds really dear to him. And that's all written because like, well, then you could just get any random strangers, like, hey, he's good, alright, cool, he's the sacrifice. Which is kind of fucked up because they kind of do that later on anyway in one of the routes. It's like, so is it or is it not? I don't know. Overall, he picks whoever he finds the most good in his perspective. But it doesn't really make sense half the time. And at first I thought it was like, oh, it's a range issue, right? Well, the person I had in my head, she's like 20 miles away. I can't do it. So, alright, you're right here. But that gets thrown away in like chapter 3. It already fucks it up. And even without chapter 3, it again fucks it up even more so in it's in the Nemesis route, where it's, hey, you want me to kill the Emperor? Nah, I gotta kill you too, and he's gonna be miles and miles away. And then the Commissioner, which apparently is a stepdad, is like, nah, kill me instead. It's, okay, I guess there is no range issue. I have no idea why anything is like that. Why couldn't you just kill the random character in chapter 3, right? Where it's like, well, again, it's depending on levels. It's like, yeah, the guy you killed in chapter 3 was not that important enough to kill one of these two characters. It was fine. Like even if you go even deeper into it, the possible choice in the chapter 3, she wasn't good either. That was not a good choice. They're both bad, but whatever, I guess. But back to point, the Commissioner or his stepdad should be dead. There's no reason why he's still alive this late in the game. It's just weird that, again, in a Nemesis route, he chose the prince. He chose in chapter 3. But later on, other times, like, no, you're forced to kill this one. Haha. dude, just be consistent. Like, it even mentions in the true route where he could have picked any of the 3 children for chapter 1, but he chose Yuhi. But at the end, depending on your choice, you're forced to kill Muramasa. When Ichijo and Kaine were just... Well, I mean, he didn't know, but they were like 20 meters away. And it's the funny thing in that route, it's like, if you chose the killer, the main character pretty much died off screen, like 5 minutes afterwards. It was pretty funny. Like, even in the initial bad ending, when you're forced with the ultimatum of either killing off the protagonist or Muramasa because they ran out of, like, quote-unquote good people, which even that doesn't make any sense, because if you consider how Ichijo handled it in her route, Ichijo could choose who to kill. It's like, alright, you're good, do you accept? Okay, cool. It's like, they could just get some random people. There's never a point where, well, where are the last 2 people? It's like, no, that doesn't happen. It shouldn't even be possible, because he still considered her a tool at that point. All the blame goes to him, so she can't be seen as good or bad. Any random would have been a better choice. And whilst in the beginning it was alluded that he had to know the person to be sacrificed, but in the true ending he just does it mathematically. Sure, he has colleagues and they probably do most of it, but even then it's like he has to be doing something here and there, otherwise no one will really like follow him. And again, you can just go back to the Heroes Out version and just pick someone. Instead of a rule, it's more like he just self-imposed it. Another thing based on the affection meter is that there's a couple of times where the meter should have dropped. Like at least 2 times in Kaine where he's like, nah, Kaine's a piece of shit, but her meter never drops. So affection meter aside, like everybody knows about this, what's it called? Like suspension of disbelief, right? Whereas like, yeah, it sounds stupid to us, but inside the plot, it makes total sense. And you can use that for like, well, Hikaru as an under 1 day old child remembers what her mom was saying. And I was like, damn, that is retarded. And it would be in a normal scenario. But even in this scenario, everybody's like, what the fuck are you talking about? That's not possible. That is stupid. And something that's a different topic, but still about the family, is the family leader, or I guess the previous family leader, was all about like, keeping the clan alive and following traditions. He was really stubborn on it, and it's like, no, I will not get any random foreigners to cure my dying fucking granddaughter, or whatever he was, I forgot it was. But she was going to be like the new head, right? Like, no traditions. Like, what fucking tradition are you going to have if she's fucking dead? Like, it was months or something before he did anything, and that's after the protag intervened and passed his tests. This is a pretty shitty ass clan leader, or clan elder, I guess. I guess that's what he is. Like, I get that, like, oh yeah, asking for foreigners is shameful to the family name. But again, what kind of family name do you have when she's dead? And technically, yeah, he did. She did. And now that we're talking about the clans and shit, like, I actually guessed the reveal during this chapter. This is chapter 5. Even though it's pretty off there, it's one of those things like, what is the dumbest idea you can have? That's probably what it's going to be. And this one, that's what it is. Because when you think about it, is if the role of the man or the husband is solely for breeding purposes, it's really weird that you got accepted and had enough time to adopt the kid. Dude, your only one job is to make a kid, and you couldn't make the kid. How are you still here? Well, someone had to make the freaking kid. It's like, are you just legally there now? It's like, is your stepson the dad? I was like, what the fuck is this? And it turns out stepson's the dad. It's like, ah ha ha. So a lot of it is dumb, because again, it's like, the kid that's under day old just misunderstood, and they thought they're talking about the commissioner, but it was really Kageyaki. I forgot his name, but I think it's Kageyaki. Oh, it was him all along, and it's like, nah, that's dumb. It's dumb either way. You can't remember shit from under day old. That's stupid. It was like, all right. Because later on, they show like, yeah, no, Hikaru always knew. Then why the hell was that dad in the background in that scene? I mean, what the fuck is that? No, you knew who it was. Yeah. Oh, a twist. Oh, it's a dumb twist. It's a twist that didn't work because I thought about, cause like, what could be the dumbest thing, and it was. Was it cool? Hell yeah, it was cool in the last chapter, but still dumb. Can't. I think that's why I like Demon Bane, because like, from the start, it's like, no, this is dumb. Everything here is dumb. I'm like, yeah, this is good. Look how stupid this shit is. It's like very, like a scary movie that's bad is just bad. But if the scary movie knows it's bad and it's just being a comedy, then it's, yeah, that's pretty good now. So getting off of that, and I know people are like, man, you bitched a lot about that. It's like, yeah, it's a part I didn't like a lot. But we'll switch, and I'll talk about Masamune, because that one's also weird. Because technically Masamune was never used because everybody just revered it and they don't want to use it because like, oh, this is too godly. But Soromachi in like chapter 4 was like, this is a personality mismatch issue. Like, oh yeah, Ichijo is just like, you and him are really alike, so it'll work out. If it's both, yeah, that makes sense. But Masamune complains that no one ever used them. Like everybody's too cowardly, right? So I was like, then it was not a mismatch issue. Just no one wanted to use you. It was pretty funny that he was such in close proximity to the Mecha God as well. Another thing is there was a CG flashback near the beginning of the route, or beginning of the hero route, where it's like, oh, look at Ichijo and the main character do this. Oh, look at the Ichijo and main character do that. And one of them's like, nah, my guy didn't do that. I don't know what you're saying. And I had to go back and do a couple times and actually got a game over once. And then I found it. It was like, oh, that's how you get it. And no, just hide it from me, I guess. I don't know. It just confused me. So the way they want to do it is actually pretty hard in the plot itself, because a lot of times I don't think you would ever get that scene correctly without a guide at that point. Or you're just really lucky. Because either you're not putting a lot of points into Ichijo, so she can't die, or if you put too much, she will die, so you wouldn't get that scene anyway later on for the flashback, because she's dead, so you get no route. So you have to do very specific things of like, well, I get 3 points for Ichijo here, now just talk to the unrelated character in chapter 3, and just spend time with her instead. And because of that, now Kaine is also lower, so you get the scene, but also you get Ichijo's route. No, I don't think it's very possible. I don't know. Another one is the whole Yagyu, which I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. It's the guy with the goggles, or a lot of goggles. So there's this fight in the hero route where he's unmanned and he's fighting the main character, and he's completely destroying the main character. The main character's like doo-doo butter, right? And I think the whole point is like, well, in chapter 4, the main character was also losing to, what the hell, Soromachi. It's like, well, he was also, yeah, he was, but he was just an inferior mecha. It's different. It was like, oh, I have inferior specs, but my technique levels us and makes me even better than you. This one's like, nah, I'm just in a human ass body and I'm still beating you. And I think the purpose of it is for the Makin thing, because I think it's Hanachirasu, that's what it's called. Like the whole thing's like, nah, I'm Makin its ultimate moves and we could still beat you. And apparently he had so many Makin moves that the main protagonist couldn't do anything. It's displayed later in like the true route where it's like he's probably closer to what Sayo is, where it's like, oh, it's more of like a demon bane character. It's not very mecha based anymore, and that's why I can beat him. But who knows? I'm pretty sure that's what it is, and it's not a huge nitpick. It was just kind of dumb. It was like I complained at the moment. It made sense later. So in the hero route, they kind of break the system, or the law of balance, I mean. So very basic shit where the main character now understands that everybody's comprised of good and evil. They use Daoshin as the example, which is true. So it's like, yeah, killing one guy also pretty much means you're killing a good guy in someone else's eyes. He knows that himself that he's doing it, or he's doing it at the same time, so I don't know why the system is still the same way. And I think it's probably just like, oh, this is semantics, where it's like, yeah, Muramasa understands, but no, but you still have to kill 2 people though. This is further proven by how Hikaru circumvents it all, because she's like, well, I don't hate the guys that I'm fighting. I'm conquering them. It's not about malice or anger or anything, so I don't have to abide by the rule, because it's not like I killed a bad or good person. They're the same to me. But taking that aside, the protag failed to kill Ichijo when that was like his thing, and it was basically a draw, but that means the agreement wasn't fulfilled. But he's somehow doing fine for, well, he's pretty much dying, but he's still doing fine. He's not like, oh no, automatic kill someone that happens in like chapter 5 and a couple other chapters. So like that weird impulse, I guess, is not happening. And I think, so he knows about breaking the system, so it doesn't count, but then he's still kind of following it later on, so it doesn't make any sense. This is all headcanon about it, but I think it's like, well, he's getting a lot of power to beat Ichijo, because Ichijo's just breaking the game, basically. In the true route, it's like, well, I can use this rule to power myself up even higher. So it's like he has to kill Ichijo, so the system itself is giving him max power too. So the nitpick is weird because I'm not angry about this. I'm angry about the consistency of that law again. But you can write around it. And I'm like, alright, fine. Either he knows about it and just has to kill Ichijo for his own reasons, it's not about the law of balance anymore. Or the law of balance is still in effect and that's what's powering him up. And either one really works. And the funny thing is, like, I barely got any nitpicks for the Nemesis route. Mainly that there's just way too many choices. And that in this choose your own adventure part, not a captain, but considered as a captain, he was like, oh, if you were a little bit faster, you could defuse this. And it gets to your mind is like, maybe I could, but no, you can't. There's no way. I went to a guide and everything's the best way you could do. There's like no waste steps, and it's like you still got the same thing. Like there's some characters that I don't like where in the Nemesis route, they introduced this little girl that looked like a spirit, and you're like, oh, she's gonna be important. And she was, but she was so underdeveloped that it's like, whatever, you couldn't spend a little bit more time on this one. And it's more just a nitpick, it's a loss of potential, but to them it's like, no, she's serving her only purpose and she did it to serve the plot and that's it. She was not supposed to be important, but then she's been shown up later by the end in the time travel section. So it's like, wait, so she has something, but it's like, no, we're still not going through it. It's fine, just don't worry about it. She's a very, like, it amounted a lot to like a huge nothing burger. So in the true route, Genseigo is actually a manifested dream where when Hikaru sleeps, then she happens, right? But at one point, the main character panics and just carries Hikaru out of the room into just the forest, right? And she gets drowsy or whatever, she just falls asleep, and Genseigo comes out. And then she just flies off. And then I forgot, he freaks out or he just walks back to the house. But there's no mention about Hikaru's body the whole time. Hikaru's body should still be on the ground near the forest or something. I don't know what happened. They didn't talk about it. Like, I went back because, like, did I miss something? It's like, no, it's fine. She dreams and then molts and just becomes a dream and the body's not there. I don't know. Muramasa and basically all these blood mushas or blood suruis, I forgot, I think they're suruis, can regenerate from most things as long as they have the energy for it and they don't get one shot. Nothing wrong there, it makes sense from how the world's going, but the main character lost his Nodachi, and he gets it converted to these Genseigo eggs, and you can say like, well, the power was taken so Muramasa can't regenerate or make a new one, and they have to collect the eggs to recreate it, and that part is true, they have to collect it to recreate it. But then there's this, he has 3 swords, right? And his secondary sword also blew up in like the 2nd or 3rd Genseigo fight during the black hole part. It's like, well, that's gone, and you can say, or you can have the argument, it's like, well, when it breaks, it's gone, it doesn't regenerate, and the Nodachi is different because the Nodachi got converted. And yeah, that makes sense, but then the Kotetsu, which is like the new Nodachi, and that also blew up in the last Genseigo fight, right? And that came back like 2 hours later, and that was maybe like 2 weeks afterwards or something, and he had it, so why is this one back? And I'm not really sure, maybe just a time thing and they just had not enough time to do it. And then you can have like another argument where it's like, no, but the Nodachi is part of Muramasa's power and the other swords are just swords. But then at that point, how the hell did Genseigo convert it to begin with? Because apparently you can't, like Genseigo can't affect that Muramasa. Something has to give and doesn't make sense, but I don't know what it is. Also, outside of all those things, it's very basic shit in that where I feel like Muramasa's slice of life section, for some reason they put one in after all the fights, just lasts a little too long. It also is kind of weird to go on epilogue and then go back to an extra hour or two of just remaining stuff, which most of it was the slice of life stuff. The last fight before it completely ends is also very whatever because it's not even shown. Well, yeah, now Ichijo and Muramasa, or the main character, fight again. Ichijo would not have won in this case, and it kind of sucks because you're like, well, it's an open-ended because you don't know what happens. You just know that the main pro tag is in this new island and has his own regime of like mercenaries. So it's like, well, Ichijo died or Ichijo did not die, but it doesn't really matter because, again, she can't win against this amped up Muramasa who was in space and then gravity shit and has all Genseigo powers every with gravity and shit. And I talked to a guy, it's like, well, I think a lot of it, he lost it after the fight. And maybe, I guess that makes sense. But Kotetsu's still around, so it's like, what the fuck? I don't know. And it's to the point where it's like, maybe if they grouped up and fought the main protagonist together, then it's like, that'd be a cool fight because Kanye kind of fucks him up. She has a huge counter. And it would make sense with the gravity stuff. Now she's always pivoting her arrow around every time he's doing gravity maneuver shit. And while he's doing that, Ichijo is like trying to just kill the crap out of him. So it would be a cool scene like that. But that's more of a, it's not even a hindsight thing. It's like, it makes sense why Kaine did not go fight at the same time because of all the thematic shit. I'm thinking more of just what makes it cooler, what makes it more hype. And that would be because Ichijo versus Kagaki or whatever his name was is no longer hype anymore when you know how much but the shit he can do, it's no longer cool. It was like MMA fighter versus teenager. Like, what are you going to do? Sure, he was kind of amped up, but he had no Nodashi. Now he does. With gravity powers, you can't win. Even without gravity powers, Nodashi's still there. He still destroy the shit out of you. And since we're talking about it, unless Kagaki or whatever his name was just really inept on using Chachamaru's Shinogi, I'm pretty sure they beat out Raichu easily instead of just like this 1 out of 100 win rate in her own ending. Like there's a reason why Hikaru couldn't just affect her, because Chachamaru's shit was just way more potent. At one point I thought Chachamaru would have, like how the scientist guy was talking about, it's like, well, how the Surix happens is the blacksmith goes into the water with all the armor parts melting into him. And I was like, oh, so Chachamaru is gonna like kind of convert into her own Tsurugi form and then like combine with the main character to make him more powerful instead of just having the sword. And I thought that'd be cool, but I'm not really sure if it's suited for the plot. That sounds like something, again, more for Demon Bane than anything else. Maybe if it powered both, who knows? So nitpicks are done, and now it's going to be talking about stuff I liked or shit that I found interesting. So like in chapter 1, Yuhi is actually foreshadowing the hero route and how Ichijo's mindset is just as fucked up as it is pure, right? Without Ichijo showing up, Yuhi probably wouldn't try uppercutting this armored Musha. Like the outcome would have still been the damn same. He'd still die, just he would die earlier. It's nothing overtly important, but I thought it was pretty neat. I really like the generals, but more so Raicho and Shishiku, which I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. Daoshin and Chachamaru also got their own like mirrors happening, but it's not a lot. Daoshin is basically just this king of debauchery, but he still has his warrior spirit. As long as it excites him, then he's good to go. So while he's more of like the tactician at face value, he's better placed like at the front line, right? Unlike Chachamaru, where she's like more business savvy and is more just a goof, but is surprisingly the best in stringing people along and getting shit done. On the other hand, Raichu and Shishiku mirror each other a lot better, where Raicho keeps trying to be like the sneaky little shit and tries to backstab people and do shady deals, but always fucks up. And Shishiku is always like the war general, always in the front, but that doesn't represent like his real self at all because he's just an assassin, right? They're both doing roles that they're not good at, and it's just funny. Just do your own damn roles. But Raicho's like, no, I want to do sneaky shit, even though I'm the best damn warrior they have, and I could probably beat half of UK by myself or some crap. It's like, no, I want to be the sneaky guy. Like, I'm pretty sure in the plot, he damaged Genseigo without any random hacks. He just that good. He even beats up Kotetsu, or almost beats Kotetsu. And it's like Kotetsu is like pretty amped up at that point because Kageyaki, or the main protagonist, right? He can do his own Makan right now. He's pretty much broken tier and he's still almost lost, which I still say is bullshit. But okay, let's just go with it. He almost lost to Raicho, so Raicho's a beast. And it's funny because like Shishiku a little shit. He's just the assassin. He loves that shit. He's like, oh yeah, sneaky shit, hell yeah. But no, I have to be in the spotlight because it's due to my own political reasons. So he always has to be in front for the clan name, right? But that's not what he's good at. He's okay, he's pretty good, honestly. But he's not Raicho tier. He's like, yeah, he's mid tier. The hscenes are kind of whatever outside of like the first one. and the ones that pertain to the main character. And this links to Ichigo's dad. It links most of these characters, but mainly these two. You see, almost all of them are pretty much shitty people that are tethered down by some kind of self-imposed rule. Kagege first follows Subaru's way of life, and then Muramasa's principles. Just how Ayane follows his own ways and his own extremist views, since without them he'd probably just be everything he's against. It's the same case with the protag, where he was one, if not the first of the family that could split Tsukurugi steel with a normal blade. Like, even through all his family life and mother's teachings and all that, after seeing that everything would take too long, his natural conclusion was just, hey, let's just kill the whole bandit squad. And technically, he could have. He could have done it, depending on his mental state, if he went back into the slicing shit. And then in chapter 3 or 4, he's kind of freaking himself. I think it's chapter 3. He's kind of freaking himself out because he's mentally slipping again. He's like, maybe it's not so bad I'm killing innocent people. It's still for the greater good. And it's interesting because, like, well, it explains how Hikaru became what Hikaru is. And it's like, well, it's kind of from you again. And I'm going to skip a bit because then I'll just be talking about every character. And the overall gist is, like, everybody has their own mindsets that anchored themselves down and they just won't budge from it. And that's one of the huge things for the hero route, where it's like, I think this way and I'm not budging from it, but I understand your perspective and I think you're actually right, but I'm not going to move anyway. Like, I'd have to look at the lyrics again, but I'm pretty sure that's what Uzuki is all about. And that's why the first time you see Uzuki is in the hero route, I'm pretty sure. I don't think it plays in the Nemesis route at all. And talking about the track selection, sometimes it felt like it just chose it weirdly. Like, they played Uzuki during the sections before the Mecha God sections. But I think Muramasa would have made more sense. And then they played Muramasa during the first true ending, but I felt like staying and finishing Falling Leaves would have been a better case, or better yet, just go with Calling itself. And they also played Uzuki during like Chachamaru's ending, but it's not like there was a huge amount of time invested into her ending anyway. There was no track in there that would really boost hers all that well, but Uzuki wouldn't make any sense anyway, and I think that's my point. But also, it's just like, well, what would you use? Like, let's just use the hypest track we have. But all in all, I'm pretty sure they're all just psychos, to the point that all the generals in the regime are kind of not as bad by comparison, like in the grand scheme of things, which is pretty much a recurring theme outside of like the Nemesis route. And even then it's kind of iffy because it's like, Kanye's kind of scary. And everybody's like, yeah, Kanye's fucking scary, man. It's like, we put her over there for a reason. And it's like, the only difference is that Saramachi's tether is just really weak compared to the other ones, right? It doesn't really limit it in any other way. It's like, I'll still do what I want. Like, I want to do this, I'll do it, because it's like, oh yeah, you're evil, yeah, go do evil shit. Woo! Oh, you're a hero, yeah, be a hero. That's great too. So the whole thing is like, if you're a hypocrite, Saramachi's gonna go after you. Otherwise, he's fine. And at that point, it makes sense why Hikaru's as hinged as she is for the most part. It felt like the only reason why Hikari was introduced near the end is to have somebody embody what Kageaki wanted to live by and pass down what his stepmom's way of life was. Because he just couldn't do it due to his natures. Like, he was doing a pretty good job of it, just, you know, based on what happened, he had to go back to it. And that's how it was. That if he was born, like, in a different time period that wasn't engulfed in war, that he too would have been someone like Hikari. And whilst Hikari is going down that path, he continues to create his own, like, army without borders thing, like some Metal Gear shit. Where one side is like, oh, peace is the noblest pursuit, while the other is like, yeah, that is the noblest pursuit, but I am the necessary evil / deterrent. And that's what it became. So, this is the end. Would I say Muramasa is better than Demon Bane? Yeah, I still like Demon Bane better. I still give this A+1, which is basically just a 9. I just like other things better. I think a lot of the reasons why, it depends on how early you read this, where a lot of the twists were, I don't think they were really hidden from you. There was nothing really surprising. It was just written really well. I think I like this better than Cyber Slayer, but Cyber Slayer is very concise, and I think that's what helps it. I think they're making an all ages version. I'm not sure. If there is, and that's what's stopping you, cool. It's actually really cool. I liked it a lot. I actually recommend it to people, not at the beginning, maybe 10 novels in. Read something shorter, because, you know, I finished in 55 or whatever, but it seems like a lot of people took like 70 hours to do, or 65, something like that. and that's a lot. It's a huge time investment, right? It's like how I wouldn't recommend Clannad to be in the beginning because Clannad's also a huge investment, which I've seen people take like 90 hours to finish, and I took like 56 somehow. I don't know how, because everything says it's really long, but my Steam thing says 56. I think I'd probably still put this in like my top 15, maybe top 20. A lot of them are kind of biased in a way where it's like they're not as well written, but I just like the theme better, or just something that reminds me of childhood. And it's like I remember that was cool, or just there's a very specific route where it's like I like this route a lot. But yeah, that's all done. What's it called? I'm playing Neo. It's taking a while. It was free on Epic for a bit. I think I'm halfway done. Closer's got a jumping event. I picked Wolf. I didn't like ball that much, but that's because I'm mainly a J main. I'm still playing, I think it's pronounced Ys 8. It's taking a while, and that's probably going to be what the videos, my next couple videos are. I was going to do another Genshin video, but I think I'm just going to scrap it because the anniversary thing happened. A lot of people hate it now. And it's like, well, a lot of people shat on it now. I don't want to shit on it further because it's like, it's already done. All right.
Never